Hello. Hi. So I thought for today's video we would do like a very up close, whispered, and soft spoken chit chat about just some various topics. So I thought I'd start off with why I left high school. And it's a reason that I don't hear people often talk about, and I'm not sure if I'm the only person that feels this way, or if maybe some of you can relate to this. So for me, the reason why I left high school was it was too much socialization for me. But that doesn't mean that I don't like socializing. I just mean that I don't want to socialize for 8 hours. And like the thing that I can compare it to is, I don't know if you play sports, but I played soccer. And as much as I love soccer, I wouldn't want to play soccer for any longer than like a 2-hour stretch because you just get physically exhausted. And that is also how it felt for me being around people for 8-hour stretches. Is just more than my body could physically handle. And I don't know if a lot of people understand that concept, like the need to be alone, and like how some people actually crave and require alone time in order to like recharge their batteries. And I loved college because I was allowed that. I could go to a class and then structure my schedule in a way where I'd have downtime in between, or I could just go to the library and be quiet, or go to a coffee shop and do my own thing and not feel the need to be socializing for like an 8-hour stretch. Does anyone else relate to that? I think it's confusing because I think people want to assume that you don't like people, and that's not the case at all. I like people a great deal, and it was definitely sad during the pandemic when we were isolated from one another. And there was a time during my 20s where I went to Colorado with an ex-boyfriend, and we had this house for the summer that was very, very isolated, and like we weren't seeing another person like the entire time we were there. And that was too much for me. It's not that I crave complete and utter isolation. I just need breaks. And so yeah, when I was a senior, I went and I took the GED, or as Chris Rock calls it, the good enough diploma. And for me personally, that was like the best decision I ever made. It was so much happier being in college and not being in high school and forced to, go to nutrition and go to lunch where you have to sit and talk to people when you're not particularly in the mood to do it. So at that age, when I was in high school, I didn't have like the confidence to just go sit on the grass by myself alone and read. I did see certain people do that, and I was envious that they had the self-confidence to sit alone like that publicly at that age, but I did not have the confidence to do that. So I would, have lunch every day with a group of friends, or, was engaging. And, high school, unlike college, there's a lot more, you're in PE, you're in electives, you're in a lot of classes where you're already socializing, and it was more than my body could handle. So yeah, I left high school and went to college and had an amazing time. And I just think it's important in life to not be afraid to take a path that may be unconventional, if that's the right path for you, and to just always really listen to your heart and to your body, and not feel like you have to force yourself into a role or into a position that's just not true to who you are, because it's so draining. And it carried on with me, into adult life, my entire career of working at LAUSD, which is a school district in Los Angeles. The entire time I worked there, I would always take my lunch breaks in my car, and I just would go out there and sit alone by myself. And sometimes I would listen to ASMR, sometimes I'd listen to music, sometimes I just look out the window and eat my food. But I needed that time, and I know that sometimes people would take that personally, that I was, choosing to sit alone in my car rather than go into the break room. But for me, it wasn't a choice, it was like a necessity. And I just kind of want to bring awareness to this, because I feel that people like me are often misunderstood and seen as rude or aloof or stuck up, maybe. And it's not the case at all. There's just some people who get really physically drained by being around other people. And that is not to say, like I said, that's not to say that they don't like them. It's just the way their body works, and they have no control over it. And you wouldn't judge someone that wasn't able to work out longer than 2 hours, or run longer than 2 hours, or climb a mountain longer than 2 hours. But the same is true for some people when it comes to social situations. Their battery just gets depleted, and it literally does feel the same way as it does when you've reached your capacity at physical exercise. It's a very similar feeling of just feeling like when you're done working out, when you're done running, and I know when I'm done being around people. So I just sort of wanted to make that disclaimer. One, if there's anyone out there that feels that way, knowing that you're not alone. And two, just to bring awareness to it. If you so happen to have someone in your life that is like that, and you take it personally, don't. It's not personal. Some people just need to go off on their own for a little bit. And it doesn't mean that they don't like you, or that they think any less of you. The other thing I was going to say about high school, as I was sort of thinking about this the other day when I was getting ready, is I'm glad that I went to high school during a time before social media was a thing. 'Cause I just don't think our brains are really meant to be comparing ourselves to people that are like so outside of our, let's say, like socioeconomic status level. So like when I was in high school, like I had to walk to and from school. I did not have a car. I had to walk to school. My mom worked, and I walked. So I would see people driving a car, and I would be envious of that, envious that they had a car, and it wasn't even a nice car. It'd be like a Honda, Civic or whatever. Not that that's a bad car, but I'm just saying by today's standards, you have high schoolers and people comparing themselves to Kylie Jenner flying around on a private jet, and it's just this level of comparison that's not healthy to even have in our brain. And then when I finally did get a car at, I can't remember if it was like around 18 or so, I got my mom's hand-me-down car. My mom is someone that just will drive a car until it falls apart, and she has like a lot of loyalty to her car. Like for her most recent car, when we just recently went to finally get her a new car, I think she had that one for like 20 years, and she actually started crying when she left it in the lot because she felt like she was abandoning it. I don't have that at all. I don't have like an attachment to like physical objects or even houses. But so anyways, yeah, I got her hand-me-down car, when I was 17 or 18, which was a complete mess. This was the car that she had driven our entire childhood, and my brother, I've talked about him a little bit. He was basically like a Dennis the Menace character, and lots of times when we were little, since she was a single mother, she would take us on errands with her, but like we would wait in the car because she just like didn't want to deal with us inside the store. It was kind of like a pick your poison sort of scenario because neither one of them really ended up great. My brother was kind of like a hellion wherever he was, but so she would leave us in the car, and then my brother would get bored, and on one occasion he just like stuck, I think it was a pen, like all through the upholstery of like the back seats of the car. Another time, this is back when cars still had cigarette lighters in them, he lit the lighter and burned holes all in the upholstery. So this is the car I eventually got, and I was like never embarrassed to be driving that car, because like I said, there's no social media back then. I just didn't like have any frame of reference in terms of nobody that lived around me was driving nice cars or anything of that nature, so it wasn't even in my expectations or my desires that I deserved more or anything like that. I don't know, I just think it's unfortunate that social media can make us feel less than in some sort of way. And then I was thinking about like how we never really know though, what is going on with someone, even the people that seem the happiest and the most fulfilled. And the person I was specifically thinking about was Anthony Bourdain. And I think all of us, took that loss sort of more deeply than others, because not only was he like such a likable person, but he was someone that just from the outside looking in seemed to have it all, to have like, the dream job. And I mean, he got to travel the world and try all these exciting new foods, and it just seemed like he was so effortlessly able to get along with everyone and just, you know, mingle and fit in any type of environment. And that was something that I personally really admired, because I'm not that way, you know. Like I have people that get me, and then there's like people that definitely do not get me. And he was someone that just, no matter where he was, what part of the world, like he was able to find like this common ground with people that was just really admirable. And so to realize that someone like that was deeply unhappy was just, it was really sort of earth-shattering in terms of recognizing that the outer does not reflect the inner, and that we should never make the assumption that anyone's mentally or physically healthy based on how they appear from the outside looking in. And then I thought I would talk a little bit about my first heartbreak. So I was a late bloomer in every possible sense. Like I'm still blooming. I'm still like figuring out how to human properly. It's like I didn't just take to it like a duck to water, as they say. It's been something I have struggled with, but that's a whole other topic. But anyways, yeah, so in terms of love, like I did not date at all in high school. I was just like into playing sports and into writing poetry and reading the thesaurus. I would legitimately read a thesaurus for fun in high school. That's like the level of not cool I was. And I really wish I still had this specific thesaurus, because it was a really amazing thesaurus, and I've never found one that was like anywhere on the same caliber. It really gave you like these choices of words, like for example, say like you know, wanted an adjective for hungry, and you know, it would give you these words like famished or something that were just like things that you don't hear every day. And it really helped my writing, reading this thing on a regular basis, and I like legitimately found it a fun pastime, which is kind of sad. So I was in my mom's garage a little while ago, and I found some old high school journals. And you know, when people talk to me sometimes, like they don't believe that, like, oh, I never dated in high school or went to a school dance or anything like that. And then you see journals like this and you're like, oh, okay, I get it, that makes sense. You were that type of girl. So this is a high school journal, and I mean, I found there was an entire shelf of these things I wrote every single day, just pages upon pages. Oh my god, I got so off topic. I was gonna tell you about my first heartbreak. I'm so ADD. Creepy drawing. Alright, so my first heartbreak. We'll get back to that. My first heartbreak was when I was in my 20s. You know, since like the majority of people by the time they were in their 20s had already sort of like had relationships and like, you know, broken up with people, like they had already probably developed some sort of like defense mechanism and like we're a little jaded and maybe like a little scarred, which is actually a good thing, you know? It's like you don't want to be walking around just completely naive, like just a little puppy dog when you're in your 20s. But like I went into the dating scene like that in my 20s, just completely clueless, completely naive. No idea whatsoever what I was doing. And so I met this guy and I was just completely gaga for him, just head over heels, and I had no type of body armor, so to speak, and I don't really know how to explain that in English. My grandmother used to always say that, even though English was the only language she could speak, just meaning that like there's no way of articulating this like concept. And it's just like at this age, like I feel like I have a body armor just from being through so many situations that have made me, you know, a little more callous. But at this age I was just this like sweet innocent little puppy. So, you know, I was madly head over heels in love with this guy, and you know, he broke up with me in a text message. So harsh. And he just broke my little innocent, pure heart into like a million pesos. And that was my first heartbreak. And your first heartbreak really is the heartbreak that prepares you for all future heartbreaks. And no heartbreak ever, at least in my opinion, ever hurts as badly, because it's just like once you've made it through that, like your heart has physically changed in a way. And when I read these poems that I wrote from that time period, it makes me sad, because I realize like the version of myself that I was when I was writing these is just a version of myself that I'll never be again, that I'll never be able to recapture. And while I don't miss him at all at this stage in life, I mean, this is so long ago, yeah, it makes me a little sad when I read myself writing about it. Because, you know, it's just like that whole innocence lost kind of thing. And I guess it's sort of sad that I'll never be able to love with like that level of abandon ever again. Which, you know, is good and bad. It's good in the sense that, you know, I won't ever be that devastated ever again, but it's like sort of sad in the sense that like I had to build this sort of like body armor in order to exist in the world. My astrological sign is the crab, and that's just like such a representation of who I am. And, you know, like a soft interior that has had to develop this outer shell that is very tough in order to protect themselves from their environment. And the thing about it, the thing about building a wall, or the thing about like having some sort of armor, is that it's like once it's on, maybe there is some way to take it off. I don't personally. I have no idea how. I wouldn't even know where to begin. But I thought it would be sort of fun to read like 2 poems that I wrote during that time period. Personally, I find like people reciting something to be very like hypnotic and relaxing, so I thought that reading these would do that. So I'm gonna set the microphone down. I'm gonna pick up the creepy journal and read a little bit here. So here's my little journal. And the title of this poem is called Cold Spring. That was the name of the restaurant that we went to. And I just thought it was an interesting sort of like juxtaposition of words, you know, in terms of the word cold and the word spring, since they don't, you know, sort of a happy word and a sad word mixed together. And it was kind of you know, the end of love is sort of a bittersweet thing, because you are happy to have loved, but you're also very sad to have lost. So in this poem, I'm just sort of describing this feeling that like pervaded my every sort of waking moment for that period of time. There's a tavern nestled in the trees where love once brought you to your knees. The flames still flicker and the candles burn, but we should not return. Though the vapor lingers in the air like a presence that is always there, the room will swell and the walls will crack, but we should not go back. Block the roads and burn the maps. Dig the ditches and set the traps. Ignore the violent pleadings of my heart. There is no choice now but to part. But there's one thing I know for sure. There's one thing that has no cure. It has no start. It has no end. It doesn't fade. It doesn't bend. It never stops. It never sleeps. It's on the surface and buried deep. It's on my clothes. It's in my hair, in every thought and every prayer. It's in the air and the food I eat. It's in the sun and between my sheets. It's in the soot. It's in the mud. Behind my smile and in my blood. Inside every verse of every song. It isn't right. It isn't wrong. It simply is and will always be. I live in you, and you live in me. And I'm sure that most of us can relate to having a loss that you just carry everywhere with you, everywhere you go, no matter what you're doing. It's like just below the surface, always. And that's what, that was about. And it does make me sad, like I said, to read it, not because of the lost love, because of the lost version of myself. Like that version of me is, no longer in existence. So that's what made me sad. But writing poetry was always so cathartic for me, because I could take a feeling that was not pleasant, and then I could try to transform that feeling into something that I perceived as beautiful. And then that was so healing, to take something ugly and something painful and turn it into something that you felt was beautiful. It's like the tremendous thing about art, whether it's painting or music or film. You're able to give a voice to something that you can't articulate in normal, everyday language. I definitely recommend finding some sort of outlet, whatever appeals to you, and being able to sort of like purge yourself of whatever feels trapped inside. It's a nice process. I think you're always sort of asking yourself, like, as you're creating, like, how do I really feel? What am I really trying to say? And there's sort of like this, if you do archery, there's like this bullseye. And when you're creating, it's like you're, shooting arrows at this bullseye, trying to hit the target. And, you got closer and closer to hitting the bullseye. And it's such a good feeling when you feel that you were able to take something and present it in a way, this feeling, this like, intangible feeling, and then present it in a way where other people can relate to it, hopefully. So I did a lot of poetry in that style, but then I also did some writing that was sort of in like a different style, and I was going to read you one excerpt from this as well. So this poem is also about lost love. I think the majority of my poetry is about lost love. That was like a very reoccurring theme in my work. But this one, I don't know, I like have a very vivid imagination. I can just like imagine these scenarios that are so otherworldly. I think that's why I love like sci-fi and movies that just depict life that's not based in reality, because it's just so easy for my mind to go there. So this one is sort of more like a stream of consciousness, just still describing lost love. The clock melts into the sink. Time has lost all meaning. Yesterday is today. Every day is the same. No matter what transpires, I pour myself a drink, sink into my ragged couch, and wonder, how did everything get so tangled? twisted like a lion's mane, entwined like a spider web, weaved into a crocheted nightmare. I stagger out into the night and watch the moths argue under the pale moonlight about whose wings are the largest. I catch a lonesome midnight train, but every passenger picks my brain like an interrogation officer. Don't open the parlor door. The peaches and secrets will spill on the floor, and everyone will know I'm a liar. Don't brush the regrets off my TV tray, and never ask me how I am today. I no longer respond to that question. Papier-mâché dragons walk the hall. Former shadows creep and crawl, whispering, "Do you still love him?" A circus gypsy mailed me a deck of tarot cards with a sequined note that read, "She asked the stars," and discovered that he was my shelter. My manger crumbled from lack of trust. All that remains of him is dust, and I see him holding an umbrella above another. Pretty dramatic. So, like I said, it's sad in a way that I'm no longer that version of myself, but like, as you can see, that version of myself was just feeling things like a little too much. Like, it needed to be toned down a little bit. There needed to be some armor built. It's not healthy to go through life just like this open, festering wound. There needs to be scabs that develop and scars, and there actually is some good in that. In a perfect world, no, but I don't know if you've looked around lately, but this world's not perfect. So, ideally, it'd be great if we could all just stay the way that we are when we're born, these, blank, perfectly trusting little beings just filled with love and hope. But sadly, the world does not allow you to stay in that state. It's just too painful. This is kind of depressing. I didn't mean for it to be so depressing. But on that same note, in terms of like the world being sort of shitty, it seems like no matter what time period we're in, people always want to feel like the current generation has sort of like ruined everything. I can't remember if it was like the writings of Socrates or Plato. I don't remember which one of them was the one that actually wrote things. One of them, like, they're not sure if he even existed. But anyways, I was reading the philosophies from one of them, and they were lamenting over the fact that today's youth basically sucks, and it's ruining everything. And I was just thinking how funny it is. Like, this is written 2,000 years before Christ, and even then, like, the older people were like looking at the youth and just thinking like the world is ruined. So I guess that's just something that's just continued to happen all throughout history. And there was something that was actually sort of comforting in that, because like the world just keeps going. Every time we think like, oh, I don't know, it's in some sort of downward trajectory, it's about to combust into flames. You know, it's just a bunch of peaks and valleys. And this is sort of a weird aside, but I was walking down Hollywood Boulevard not that long ago, and I was with a friend, and there was this museum called, I think it was like the Museum of Torture, which is, you know, but I mean, like, the girl that picked out this journal, obviously, like, it appealed to me in some sort of way. So I went into this museum, and I really regret doing that, because there's certain things that, like, you just can't unsee. And, you know, these were like medieval time things. I'm not even gonna go into them because it's not what anyone wants to hear in a relaxing video. But, like, the good news is, as horrible as things can seem sometimes right now, it would appear that we've made some progress since, you know, the Dark Ages. In some areas. In some ways not. But I don't know. I did leave thinking, well, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's not hopeless for humanity. Maybe we're like very slowly climbing our way up when it comes to empathy. Alright, well, this was a very rambling, weird video, but hopefully some of it was relatable. And one last thing, I was just gonna give a little tip if you're someone that has like a little bit of social anxiety, like I do from time to time. It's not constant. Like, sometimes I feel fine, and then sometimes I feel like I want to hide in my little shell. But if you're feeling a little nervous in a social situation, and you don't just want to sit there like a bump on a log, as my grandmother would say, something that I have found helpful is I just ask questions. And ask questions of, you know, like the other people at the table, questions that are going to take the focus off of me and allow them to tell a story. And most people actually love talking about themselves, I've discovered. Like, I hate being asked questions in like a dinner party situation. Like, I don't want to, for the most part, give an elaborate answer when everyone's looking at me, which is so weird because I do this, but this feels very different. I think I was hearing Jason Bateman talk about this on his podcast, Smartless, and he was talking about how, like, he can't make a toast at a dinner party, but, you know, he's an actor and he has a podcast and all these things, but I feel the same way. I think I'm very in tune with how I'm being perceived by the people that are in that room with me. It's like I can, it sounds kind of crazy, but I can like feel people's energy and like their negative thoughts, and that like gets in my head and like fucks with me. But with this medium, it's like you could be sitting on the other end of this just thinking like, what a complete idiot, but I can't feel that, so I don't feel inhibited in any sort of way. It's been like an interesting way of being able to communicate without having to feel like the energy of anybody else in the room. I don't know if anybody else has that. It's like, do you ever have that when you're in a group and you like start to tell a story and you just can tell like the people don't actually want to hear it, are not thinking positive things about you, or they're just not getting it, and it like impedes and it inhibits you, and you're not able to like speak from the heart or be unedited because you like feel their judgment. Now I just sound like so paranoid, but it's like a real thing. But it's nice with this because you just have no idea how you're being perceived, besides like the comment section. But I don't know, thankfully ASMR seems to have nice comments. Which is definitely not true for the rest of the internet, but I don't know, the ASMR community seems like a nice group of people. Like, in some ways, I'm so jealous of people that can just talk and they have zero idea of, like, how they're being perceived. I don't know if you ever see this happening, but, like, say you're at, like, a family party or something, and there's just, like, one relative that has no sort of, like, barometer in terms of, like, maybe the political affiliations of like everyone else in the room, and they just start spouting off, and like internally you're realizing like, oh wow, this is about to just turn horrible, but you can tell they're just like happily sharing this opinion, like completely oblivious to the fact they've like alienated and pissed off the entire room. Like, I just am too acutely aware of like what everybody else is thinking constantly. So like, this is such a breath of fresh air for me to be able to speak into this vacuum to this audience whose reaction to me I never am able to see. I really love that.